Paul is very aware that many in his contemporary society, and in Corinth especially, are impressed by what sounds like wise speech, clever teaching, good rhetoric. And he's aware that the gospel message that he preaches sounds simple, even absurd to unbelievers. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? Since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand miraculous signs, and Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength. The world has its own wisdom, of course, but God's thoughts and God's ways, they are higher than ours, and his wisdom is supreme, even if it looks like foolishness to the watching world. It's a very extraordinary thing for us to consider. Knowing all things, having power over all things, the supreme wisdom of God was displayed in this. His incarnate Son hanging on a Roman cross to pay the penalty of my wrongdoing and of yours. The wisdom of the all-knowing, all-powerful God was showcased in glory as his sinless Son suffered the agony of death in place of the guilty. As he suffered for the sake of unworthy and undeserving creatures like us. Now that is the wisdom of our God. And the world, through all its supposed wisdom, it doesn't get it, it doesn't believe it. It didn't get it then, it doesn't get it now. But it pleases God, says Paul, to save those who will believe through the preaching of the gospel. You know, it's also very unexpected. It's also counterintuitive. It's so surprising. Jews demand signs and Greeks want the best wisdom of the best philosophers, but we preach Christ crucified. That message, it's a stumbling block to Jews who didn't expect their Messiah to suffer, and it's sheer foolishness to Gentiles. But for those whom God has called, it is God's own power and God's own wisdom. With all the knowledge and all the power in the universe within himself and at his own disposal, what does God do? How does he harness all that to carry out his supremely wise plan? Well, here's what he does. In the person of his Son, he becomes human. He humbles himself. He suffers agony and dies a shameful and excruciating death. And here, as we look on his wisdom at the cross, perhaps here we gain the deepest insight of all the insights we have gained or will gain. Here, perhaps, is the most profound thought we will be given to think. That the all-wise God should display and express his wisdom supremely in the agony and the shame of the cross. Utter foolishness to the darkened mind, It looks like a disaster. It seems like a gargantuan mistake. Why would God's Son die? Why would his Messiah suffer? But here is wisdom beyond all wisdom. Here is power beyond all strength. Here is a display of the glorious wisdom of God like no other display. Gospel. God has